Welcome back to Still a Part of Us. We're excited for Kat to join us today. And she just told her story of her twins, Violet and Hazel. And if you please, I would highly recommend listening to their birth episode. It is heart wrenching and beautiful, and it's hard, but it is a beautiful story. And I'm glad that she took the time to tell us because I'm sure somebody will benefit. So, Kat, thank you again for coming on and chatting with us today.
You bet. Thank you.
So, as a bit of reference, can you tell us what happened to Hazel and Violet and about how long ago they were born at the time of this recording?
Right. Um, so they were born just a little over 2 years ago now. We first found out about Hazel's diagnosis. She had anencephaly. Um, so we knew that she would ultimately not be able to survive once she was born. And then 4 weeks after that, at another appointment, we found out that our other twin daughter, Violet, her heart had stopped beating, and later discovered that that was due to a cord accident, a hypercoiled umbilical cord that stopped her heart.
Yeah. Thank
Yeah,
you so much. It just feels I don't know, when I was listening to your story, I was just struck by how like everything all the cards that were dealt to you were just
yeah,
it was showing up as terrible. It felt like terrible, but I what you guys were able to do, was really lovely and beautiful that you were able to spend time with them and introduce
yeah.
your daughter to them, and I thought that
Mhm.
was so nice. Kat, from those early days after having lost your daughters, can you tell me how your grief was in those early days and then how it's kind of morphed? Because it's like you said, it's been about 2 years. Tell me how that's changed for you over this time. And I know that's a big question, but if you can kinda give me some ideas of, like, what that's looked like for you.
Yeah, I think in the early days, you expect to be overcome with grief, you know, and as you live, at least for us, like carrying on with life with with them being gone. It's always been very important for us to just keep them a very present part of our everyday life, really.
Mhm.
Um, my daughter, she at her preschool, her very first show and tell was she has these two little sloths, they're Hazel and Violet, and she brought them for show and tell. She was so proud to talk about them,
Yeah.
and that had already been a year after.
Mhm.
And yeah, so you kind of expect to be in a dark spot right after. But as time goes on, it's almost painful to think about the days that you don't cry or that you don't fall apart
Mhm.
because it feels like you're letting go of them. But for us, because they're just so part of our everyday life, it just changed the way that we talk
Mm.
about them. And my husband used to be in the military, and so what they do at mess dinners there is they set a plate for the soldiers or people who aren't able to be there
Oh, yeah.
but passed on. And so that was his idea as like a little way to remember our girls is like to have a little setting. So we have these little tiny plates I
Yeah.
picked up at this shop and Eleanor remembers them all the time whenever she's just missing them or on a birthday or like Thanksgiving, any special time she brings them out and wants them to be present in our life as
Mhm.
well in that way. And so there's ways that we just keep their memory alive. And a big part of that is our little tree we planted as well. Like
Mhm.
that, it just becomes like as it's right in our garden. So I see it there in the summer all the time, and in the
Yeah.
winter we put Christmas lights on it, and it shines very brightly in our backyard, and we decorate it. And yeah, and then in the summertime we plant little flowers around the base of it,
Mhm.
and yeah, it's been a very beautiful spot to go to when we're missing them, and a reminder every day we can look because we have solar lights on it, so at nighttime it glows in
It
our
glows.
backyard. In the summer, yeah. So I really love that, and yeah, there's so many little things that we can do to like remember them, but those spoke to us, and I'm so grateful for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's something so one of the things that people did for us when we lost our son is they brought over plants. I mean, and
Mhm.
obviously we got some flowers and stuff, and those flowers died after a little while, but the plants that we have and I think of your tree, of how you maintain it and
Yeah.
and, tend to it and make it beautiful and make it a pleasant place to be, and how that's a little bit of
Yeah.
a way of parenting, mothering, fathering, big sistering, as you put it in your last
Yeah.
episode of making that place a place that you can take care of them in a sense.
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a happy memory too. Like,
Yes.
it's always a happy memory when we think about it or look at the tree or,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
it's a happy thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's weird to be happy when you think about your daughters that died. It is weird because we don't have those
Mhm.
memories that you get to have when they're,
Yeah.
in your life, living in your life that
Yeah.
way. So it's just very different, and it's a such a unique thing to navigate that type of grief.
Mhm.
But we just kind of did what felt right for us. And like I said, like just creating that space with the tree was, yeah, a thing my husband loved, like
Yeah.
something he could do, lift up something heavy, be a dad, and yeah, for Hazel and Violet and
Yeah.
for our family. Yeah, it was very healing for him. Yeah.
That sounds perfect for
Hmm.
a way to act like a parent or
Yeah.
to be in a parently role.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you guys were very much in sync, very much on the same page when it came to you and David having the same ideas of what you wanted to happen.
Mhm.
Has there been anything that you have done in order to support him or to help him through this the last 2 years?
Yeah, I mean, I've heard it said many times, just like men and women often, I mean, just people, they all grieve differently. It doesn't
Hmm.
have to be men and women, but particularly a lot of times men are just quiet in their grief. And I mean, women are just given the opportunity to talk about it more because, well, first of all, I was pregnant and had
Hmm.
babies. And so there's a lot of, yeah, there's a lot more people asking me how I'm doing and a lot less asking him. So, like, the opportunity isn't there, but also, like, he doesn't really know how to vocalize it sometimes, at
Mm,
least my husband. And so it is difficult still sometimes that we grieve so differently.
yeah.
And so I do have to remind myself of that, but also, like, I need David to show me sometimes. And he doesn't have to talk about it if he can't. So what he does, when he's thinking of them and missing them, there's a song that plays, that makes him think of. It's now become like their little
Their
song that we
song.
all like. Eleanor has a little playlist, and that's when she instructed to be added to her playlist because it
Mm,
makes her think of them. And so whenever he's thinking of them, he plays that song, and so he
yeah.
doesn't have to talk about it. There's no pressure for him to need to be anything for me, but he's just kind of showing me without telling me that he's missing them and, yeah, grieving them. So in that way, I mean, it wasn't always easy to figure that out. So 2 years out, you can kind of look at it from a different perspective and understand, like, his grief is just so different than mine.
Mhm.
Um, so that's one thing that I took away, that I could help him, and just by not putting the pressure on him to be anything, like, expecting anything from him,
Yeah.
just let him show me in his way, and that was how he felt was
Y
right.
yeah.
Yeah.
You just gotta let them you gotta let yourself,
Mhm.
others grieve the way they need to grieve because it does
Yeah.
look so different sometimes.
Yeah. And
And
sometimes you cling to each other and sometimes you need to be alone,
mhm.
and it's all okay and it's all part of it. And that's hard sometimes too because sometimes we don't need the same thing at the same time.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it is. It's
I don't
tricky.
want to make it seem like we were always in sync because we weren't. And sometimes we were and sometimes we weren't. And
Mhm.
on the big things we were. And so that was made things a lot easier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it sounds like Eleanor is a super proud big sister, which is
Mhm.
great. Is there anything that you guys do in order to help her as you guys have navigated talking about the kids and helping her through any sadness that she may experience?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, we do read a lot with her at night.
Mhm.
That's part of our routine. And so, like, we'll often, like, we each pick a book. So if there's days we feel like we need to talk about it a little with her, just like
Mhm.
bringing one of the books out usually prompts conversation for her to just come to us with what she's
Oh,
thinking. To
okay.
be honest, she like whenever she lists our family, like she'll be playing with her animals, like this is the Hazel Violet. They're always part of the roster. There's
Good.
mommy, daddy, Duke and Gus, our dogs, Hazel and Violet, and we have a new baby, Abigail.
Uh-huh.
And so and even just listing all like, oh, there's this many boys in the house and this many girls. She always counts Hazel and Violet. And I love that so much. Like I don't feel like we need to do much there with her. Like I think
Yeah.
she's processed it in a really healthy way.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So she doesn't really get all that sad about when she thinks about
Mm.
them. You know, it's a different thing for a child at that
Yes.
age too, but it's all she's really ever known, and they're just part of what makes up our family for
Yeah.
her. So I
It
remember like the photographer when Hazel and Violet were born, she was like, "What's Eleanor?" Like 6. I'm like, "She's 3." And she's like, just her maturity and the way
mm.
she understood things, and I don't know. She's beyond she surprises us all the time with that,
Yeah.
just her maturity and the way she's able to like process things, and yeah. Like
That's
I
cool.
said, she's
That's
helped us
cool.
without even knowing she's helping us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know I would say that about our daughter Lucy too.
Yeah.
She helps us every single day to remember our little son
Yeah.
and brings us joy and helps us be
Yeah.
sad too sometimes, like, just like when
Mhm.
she starts tearing up and like, "I miss him," and so it's
Mm.
those
Yeah.
those kids are blessings, aren't they?
Ugh, I know. And like
Yeah.
this, like she has this little, she's at nighttime she doesn't want to go to sleep and probably making things up to like not go to sleep. But I just say, close your eyes and what's something you love to do? And she always wants to go camping, go to the beach and have a picnic.
Yes. Oh,
With
that's
Hazel
nice.
and
Yeah.
Violet are
Yeah.
there, and Abby's there, and the dogs are there, and like, so that's her little dream that she goes to is like her like thing. So that's actually what we did this year for their birthdays. We went to the
Oh,
beach and we had a picnic and brought everybody there, and yeah, it was a lovely day, and yeah, just things like that. They're nice to just kind of cultivate her little dream of having
having the
babies
family,
alive. I
yeah.
remember her saying in the beginning, like early days, like, I had a dream, Mom, that Hazel and Violet were there and they didn't have to wear hats because their heads weren't gooey anymore. They're like, and they're alive. And like, I don't know, it's like
Yeah.
her 3-year-old brain.
Yeah. Oh, that's so sweet. That's just
Mhm.
yeah.
That's another thing is I would sort of recommend if you do have a younger or any children who are like feel like they're through the death of a sibling is like write down some of the things that you like the tender little moments like that because there's so much that happens and like for me there's a lot of like times I just feel like I don't even know what happened and like it just feels like a blackout of my life
Yeah.
and but I would jot down little things that she would say or that David
Mhm.
said and that just like meant something to me and so I can look back on it and like
Yeah.
yeah
C
remember
and
because
remember
yeah, because it speaks to where we were at together as a family
yes,
too, you
yes.
know?
Very much so, and, like, how where you were and where you, are going, and it does help.
Mhm.
It does help.
Yeah, and for Abby too, like our new baby
Yeah.
to have to teach her about a sibling that, came and left before her, like I think that makes that easier too.
Yeah.
Having those little moments like that.
Yeah. Well, and
Mhm.
it sounds like Eleanor is going to not she's
Yeah.
going to make sure Abigail knows.
Yeah, definitely.
I think that's great. I think it's awesome.
Mm.
When you, were initially going through those first, 6 months, year, was there anything that, people did that was outstanding and helpful and kind that really, really helped you in those early days?
Yeah, like I think back on those days and yes, there are some things that you wish would be different as a response from people. But the thing that, man, that would just make me cry is thinking about the kindness from people. And like,
Mm,
I don't think we made a meal for 2 months. That was very helpful, especially with the little one. Like,
yeah.
if Dave and I didn't eat, whatever. Like, but I like to even think about going to the grocery store,
Oh,
like, and somebody ask you, like, oh, is this your only child? Or, I don't know how to, like, you just spiral into this, just the thought of having to go to the grocery store
Yeah.
It's hard. All that stuff is hard, and so having the meals was amazing.
Yeah.
Um, People who would sit with you in that dark place, I found there was very few who were able to do that
Yeah.
without trying to make me feel better or fix it in some way or like wanting to have some sort of uplifting end to our story. Like in that early days, like we were not there. It just sucked. It was just awful. It sucked. There's nothing good about it in those days, right? Like that,
Yeah.
and so just the people who would just let you be in that grief and not need anything from us, because often I'm sure you've heard like from other accounts from people saying just like it felt like I had to take care of other people sometimes when I think about that a lot. That was hard, but it's weird how you can just shut it off and take care of them
Yeah.
when you're grieving in such a dark place. So yeah, being in the darkness, if you need to do something, a meal is like incredible help. That was really helpful. Um, for the twins' baby room, we had commissioned this artist to do like pet portraits of
Mhm.
watercolor versions of our dogs in
Uh-huh.
rainbow colors and stuff because, well, they would have been rainbow babies, and
Mhm.
so this artist, I told her that I was like it was for a baby room, and she said, "Oh, I'm doing this new kind of thing I'm trying is doing ultrasounds in the watercolor." And I said, "Oh, well, they actually at that point, by the time we had like connected,
Yeah.
um, they had already passed away."
Yeah.
And so she said, "I'd like to still do it for you if you let me, and I'm not going to charge you or anything." She just wanted to do it, and so that's like one thing that is so dear to us. It's just this watercolor painting of the two
Yeah.
girls together,
Yeah.
because we never had a picture actually, other than the very first one of the two of them
Yeah.
in an ultrasound picture. Because with Hazel, we would only get like feet usually. We got,
Because of their positioning.
yeah,
Yeah.
like
Okay.
the positioning, and then by the time you could see Hazel's body properly, Violet was already passed, and you couldn't, so
Yeah.
we never really had that picture. So that was really a special thing. And yeah, a complete stranger, like things like
Yeah.
that that just touch your heart and
Just kindness, kindness,
yeah,
kindness.
kindness, like compassion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You did mention, I wanna maybe just touch on this where you said some people that are willing to sit with you in the darkness. Did that look like anything in particular for you? Was that just, like, sitting with you and
Yeah. I guess it was like many late night messages
Mm,
to a couple of friends who I just trusted with that darkness, I guess, that
yeah,
wouldn't that I could be vulnerable with. And one was Bree, the photographer, who she had
yeah,
also had a loss of her own, and so she understood in a very different way than anybody else.
yeah,
And then I had a couple other friends that I just messaged and they messaged back, and it was never like I mean, sometimes just holding each other and crying together. My cousin, when we told him about Hazel, we didn't know about Violet yet, but he said one of the most loving things, like, and Dave and I both go to this moment because people just don't know what to say.
mhm,
And he just like looked at us with these tears in his eyes and he just said, just, you're loved. You are so loved. And he didn't say anything else. And there wasn't really anything else to say. But I would go back to that in my mind a lot
hmm,
as we were going through this journey. Just like we are loved,
yeah,
and you feel so alone sometimes. And so I would cling to things that just like made me feel less alone. And that was one big one that was like, if you can't say anything, and it wasn't really what he said, but the way he said it,
mhm,
you could tell he just really meant it. And yeah.
yeah,
And that he didn't have to say, like, anything you need, let me know. He was just like, there's nothing I can
the
say,
yeah,
but we love you. Yeah.
yeah. Oh, and yeah, 'cause there's not anything that you can say that's gonna fix it or
Yeah.
do anything, to make it
Yeah.
better. It just is what it
Yeah.
is, and the way he
Yeah.
acknowledged that, the only thing that he can do to support is just to
Yeah.
to show love, and that's
Yeah. And the
that
only thing certain in all of it is that
yeah,
he loves us, right? And yeah,
yeah,
it meant a lot to the both of us. So,
good. That's
mhm.
that's awesome. On the other hand, is there anything that was difficult to hear or things that people did that you're like, "This is maybe not the best thing that you would suggest doing?" I know that
Yeah.
it's kinda one of my favorite sections because 'cause I'm like, "Just don't say that." 'Cause d or
I know.
wait a minute before you say that." So is there anything
Yeah.
that was a little bit triggering or difficult that people said or did?
Yeah, I was thinking about this, and I don't know that anything I'm going to say here will be very unique,
Mhm.
but because I've heard it many times. But someone said to me, God wanted another angel. That one really upset me, and I know where it's coming from, so I didn't like, I never say anything in the moment, but it just like upset me because it just to feel that there was any kind of like bigger purpose to this was not something that brought me any kind of comfort. It
Yeah.
enraged me to think about
Yeah.
because we were like living in, this, yeah, grief, right? Another thing was just when I went back to work, a lot of people just wouldn't talk to me. And I think just didn't know what to say,
Oh,
didn't want to upset me,
yeah.
you know, didn't want to ask how I was doing. You're just kind of acted like I had never left, like just chat with me, small talk. And to me that was really difficult because yeah, I it happened and it just
Yeah.
felt like pushing it aside, and I know it's like just not wanting to upset
Yeah.
me, but I am upset, I'm hurting. You asking me is just you showing me your love, and so people not saying anything. There's definitely some friendships that just kind
Mm.
of fell away because of this, because you can't carry your part of the friendship anymore because you're just trying to survive every day. And
Yeah.
then it just the longer it goes, the harder it is. And it just kind of, so I guess it's not necessarily something people said that they shouldn't, but just to say something
Yeah.
because it means a lot to be asked. And the
Yes.
longer that it goes, like time goes on, the more important it is, the more it means to us when
Yeah.
somebody says, like, says their name, says Hazel and Violet,
Mhm.
like, acknowledges their existence, because yeah, it slips away from people's brains, and that's just the natural way of life. But like for us, like they're very present and feels like they're disappearing sometimes,
Yeah.
and that is my worst fear.
Yeah. Is that they're gonna be
Mhm.
forgotten as part
Yeah,
of who you are as part of your family.
yeah,
It is well intentioned. I think, like you
hmm,
said, is that they just don't want to bring up anything that is, hard
yeah,
and maybe, there would be the threat of crying, you know?
yeah. Oh, exactly.
I
Yeah,
think a lot of people are just so afraid of tears, and you're like, "It's okay.
yeah,
Do we insist on having everything be so clean cut? Because our lives are
yeah.
messy a lot of times."
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's kind of like the superpower you get when you grieve, right? When you've been through it, is that you can sit with somebody else's tears. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like at
Yeah.
least for me. I mean, yeah, I feel like I'm a pretty empathetic person, but on a whole other level now, can
Yeah,
I
oh, yeah.
understand and
I
like,
I like
yeah,
how you put that as a superpower because it really is, like, I because a lot of people get so uncomfortable when there are tears,
yeah,
when there's such sadness that
yeah,
people are experiencing.
yeah,
Yeah.
and like everybody's going through something, right? Like
Yes.
I remember I remember, like, just the thought in my brain when I'm walking. So, prior to Hazel and Violet, I had mentioned I had 2 miscarriages,
Yes.
and I remember looking at these little pregnant bellies and just like, "Oh, I just want that so bad," I'm longing for it, this longingness in your eyes. And then I'm pregnant with these twins, one who's already passed away and one who will be passing away soon. And I see these women look at me and I know the look because I had the look. And so you're walking around with this, and I just want to say to them, like, I just want them to know, like, you don't know what you're asking for, and you don't know what could happen ever. And you also don't know what anybody has been through ever in life. Like,
Yeah.
with somebody, because I would go to the office and joke around, and not everybody knew what was happening for me at that time. And like,
Mhm.
sometimes grief doesn't look like the tears.
Yeah.
you know Sometimes grief just is like the people who carry on with their life, and it's there. It's always under there.
Mhm.
You just never know what people are walking around with every day. That was a big takeaway for me. And it's
Yeah,
not something you didn't already know, but you really understand it in a different way.
very much so.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're like, you have no idea what kind of heartache I've had, or
Yeah.
and looking at people and giving them that grace or that little bit
Hmm.
of kindness
Yeah.
and compassion is so, so helpful.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I feel like I've become a kinder person because of that, because of our
Yeah.
loss. I honestly,
Yeah.
because our son has just like, oh yeah, this really hurts, and other people have experienced this too.
Yeah. And like once you're kind of in this community, it's like crazy how how many people, and then it's like
Yes.
having our like being pregnant with our recent daughter Abigail. I mean, that could be a whole other thing. Like
Yep.
I could write a book on that,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. Yeah, like the feeling that you feel when you're pregnant with a baby after a loss like that is unbelievable, and you go at it very differently.
Hmm.
Nothing is certain, right? And you know 100 different ways that a baby could die. You know that nothing, like every scan we went to, you're like, oh, after this happens, we'll be able to relax. Nope.
Nope.
After this, no. And yeah, like doing the baby room, that was difficult too. And I thought doing it would help me bond a little better with this
Mm.
pregnancy.
Mhm.
But I'd often sit in there and just think of Hazel and Violet the whole time. I do it still. And that's
Yeah.
okay. Like there's pieces of them everywhere in our home.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Oh, when you mentioned pregnancy after loss or parenting, even parenting after loss, that
Hmm.
is, I mean, that is it's a hard subject. And yes, like you said,
Yeah.
a completely, you could write a book about it and how difficult it is, but, and you have a whole new empathy and compassion for that
Yeah.
experience as well, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
'Cause, yeah, you just never know what's gonna happen. It
Yeah.
really, I do feel it is a miracle when babies do get here, now that I know what has happened and what
Yeah.
can happen. So,
It's like you just couldn't take a breath or, until that baby was in your arms.
yes.
And
Yes.
even then, I'm waking up at night checking her
Yeah.
and you know what I mean? She sleeps really well at night and so it freaks me out every morning. I'm like,
Yeah.
I
You
don't know
know?
when I'll be able to relax. And like, I
I
mean,
know.
even I remember, for like the full year after the girl Hazel and Violet were here. And I was just like, I just want the day to come when Eleanor won't be surprised that a baby is born alive because she would be like, Mom, so and so had a baby and it's alive. And I just like, I know she's excited and her version of reality is very different, but
Yeah.
I wanted her to see that as well. And yeah,
Yeah.
she did. She was actually at the birth for Abigail.
Oh, good. Oh, good.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so funny. I my daughter, when you said that, I was like, "Oh, yeah, I remember a time when Lucy would just like, all of her made up stories were like, and this little kid was here, and her parents died and her siblings died." And I was like, "Oh man, she is
Yeah.
just is a very different point of view of how things go because
Yeah.
of what our family looks like." And that was yeah, it's
Yes, I
kind of
remember
crazy.
yeah, it comes out in their play, hey?
Yeah.
Like I remember our daycare lady was saying like there was another little girl who had lost a brother who was
Mhm.
stillborn.
Mhm.
And the two of them would sometimes play dolls and like dead baby stuff and she's just like, whoa, it's like pretty dark sometimes. And it's like, but they're just playing like
That's what they know, and
yes.
they're
It's
part of
hard
the
for adults
family.
to see, but kids
Yes.
it's like "Ugh, that could
Yep.
happen."
It
Yep.
is what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just wanted to thank you, Kat, for your time today. It has been such a delightful conversation. I wanted to, before we close up, I just wanted to see if you had any last little bit of advice for others that may be going through this, and or so also if you wanted to say anything about Hazel and Violet and anything you want to remember about them.
Yeah, I guess the loneliness sometimes in the grief, it's so like unique to each individual. And so whatever the things that made me feel less alone were, yeah, like listening to your podcast was a big one. There's a book I read, It's Okay That You're Not Okay, or
Yeah.
It's Okay That It's Not Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's been mentioned on this podcast too before,
Hmm.
but there was a woman who sent me a copy of it in my early days, and I've read it many times since in the times when I needed to feel less alone.
Hmm.
Um, because especially having a 3-year-old too, like and my husband, I'm considering all of the way that they're dealing with everything all the time. And so when I really got to sit with it by myself, it felt very alone. And so I really appreciated having those little things to hold on to feel a little less alone.
Yeah.
We do a lot of things in our life to remember Hazel and Violet, and I think that is my biggest fear. It's just that, life, I mean, life just moves on. It does. The world just, I don't know how, but it
Yeah.
does. And so our job forever as a parent of as a lost parent will be to just keep their memory alive. And so we do that, like I said, in many ways. Like I have a tattoo that I got as
Mm.
well, and um, I love it. I'm very just having reminders around our house, our tree in our yard, our little plates that we put out for them, and
Yeah.
yeah, I just want them to be remembered. And anybody who I don't know if everybody feels that way, but I imagine most parents just want to hear that people haven't forgotten them. And as the years pass, it's just easier and harder to talk about for
Yeah.
other people as well. So those feel make you feel less alone as well.
Yeah. Less alone and not forgotten, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Because you don't deal with it the same 2 years as you did,
Mhm.
2 days. So it looks different for everybody. Right.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Kat, thank you so much. That was beautiful, the way you, summed that up, actually. I was like, "Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank you
much."
so much. I'm so grateful to you for this. Thank you.
Oh, we are so happy to be a little part of this, process for others, so thank you again,
Yeah,
Kat.
absolutely.